read. I'd like to thank both of y'all that read. I'd like to thank y'all for coming to this workshop right here. This is spring cleaning workshop. The topic is just going to be steps 7, 8, and 9. Hope y'all know them by now. And these are our two speakers for tonight. This is Amanda, and this is Robert. And they're going to let y'all know a little something about this. So, with that, I'll give you that.
Hey everybody, I'm Amanda, I'm an addict. This is, I liked the name of this workshop, even though it's 7, 8, 9, and the fact it was called spring cleaning, because when me and Rocky got together to talk about our experience, strength, and hope, and when it comes to working these steps, I thought about the fact that a lot of times in our addiction, we don't really recognize the things we hoard, that we hang on to, until we get to the point in the steps where we start to work this step. And when it talks about spring cleaning or coming home, I know that in my own recovery, much like walking into a house of somebody that just keeps everything in their closet to the point where it's running over the doors, a lot of times in my 6th step, I found that same trait to be true. And you can't talk about 7, 8, and 9 unless you jump back to 6 for a minute, because step 7 means nothing if you have not taken the time to work and look at your character defects and how those affect your life, and recognize that maybe you're not perfect and I'm not perfect, and there may be some things along the way that we have hung on to and collected along the way that have kept us from getting better and from recovering, and have allowed us to create some wreckage of our past and do some things. And so until I worked the 6th step and recognized that there were some areas of my life where I could grow, and recognize that I had to be willing to let go of some of those things that had kept me alive but had not kept me well in the process, there's no way I could have got to the point where I was ready to clean anything up and take a 7th step. And so for me personally, I had to not just surrender to my character defects, but I had to get to the point in my life where I recognized that I was going to have help to get past those. And that was not finished a workbook, talked about it with my sponsor type of situation. It was I had a huge list of things that were not good for me, that I had been doing for a long period of time to get me where I needed to be, and I recognized that I was not capable of doing those things on my own. And some of those came through the help of working with a sponsor, but the 7th step is about the fact that I really had to go back to those first 3 steps, about the fact that I was powerless, about the fact that I needed to be willing, about the fact that I needed to apply some humility, about the fact that I was going to have to go back to that real simple saying of, I can't, he can, I'm going to let him. And so when I got to the 7th step, it talks about the fact that our character defects or our shortcomings are things that cause pain and misery in our lives. And so I had put some clean time together by the time I had worked through this step, but that didn't mean my life was still on a pink cloud, because I didn't work the 6th step until I had about 3 years clean, and I spent my entire 3rd year working this 6th step. And when you don't work 6th step, it works you. So every defect I had became a glaring, obvious problem in my life, and God, my understanding, started to seriously show me how a lot of the things on that list were affecting not only the people around me, but me personally. And so I got to a point where I honestly struggled the first time I did my 7th step. I honestly struggled sitting down with my sponsor and going, what's the difference? I just looked at all this stuff. And she just basically turned around and said, shortcomings mean you come up short in the process of letting these things go. And so I had to go back to, I do believe I have a higher power. I do believe that my higher power wants to help me become a better person. I do believe that my higher power is opening doors for me to learn how to handle these things effectively. And I don't believe that I'm going to recover overnight. And it got to be that simple for me, literally. And so when it comes to, if you want to go back to the theme of spring cleaning, came back to the point where I didn't have the ability to go through my closet and figure out what I needed to keep and what I needed to get rid of. And I had to have the help of somebody greater than me to sort through that stuff and say, this is worth hanging on to, and this is something you need to throw in the trash or take to Goodwill. And so I broke down the very simple 7th step of looking at how am I using these character defects in my life, and how am I not capable of continuing to act out on those behaviors. And that was the 7th step, plain and simple. But that 7th step all comes down to me recognizing that there is a list of character defects and they are a part of my life and they're not going away. It's about how I choose to act out on them and how I choose to allow my higher power to work through me in those steps. So I had to continue to apply some humility because there's a section of my character defects list that to this day, no matter how many times I work on them, I just hang on to them in my back pocket. If I'm not getting the way I want things done at work, or if an employee or supervisor is not effectively acting in a way that I expect them to this day, I will pull out some character defects to manipulate some people to get them motivated to do the way I want things done. However, I will preface with this. Sometimes, after we work the 7th step, these behaviors that we have learned turn from defects into assets. Because I'm not a bad person, and I don't have these God didn't give me these characteristics because He didn't want me to have them. He just had to teach me how to effectively use the way I'm looking at things in my life. And so I have to continually work through remaining humble in every situation and reminding myself that when presented, I need to stop using my own best thinking, stop acting out in self-centeredness, and figure out what God's will for those situations are, and use those skills I have in an effective and productive manner to get to the end goal and be okay with whatever that end goal is. Because my way and what I think should happen sometimes is not necessarily what's the intended outcome. And so that 7th step and that pain that I went through and that misery I went through and that willingness to just stop and let God do what He needed to do in my life went back to those first 3 steps where I had to learn to trust the process. I had to learn to trust the process very early on in this program. In that first section, I had to learn to trust the process in that 6th and 7th step. Because if I wasn't willing to trust the process, there's no way I could go on to the 8th step. That process behind, how do I do this? I know you're going to show me. Don't act out on that. Don't respond that way. Don't do these things that were just like second nature to me in my active addiction. They were second nature to me, and even with some clean time. And I became entirely ready to not feel that pain anymore. I became entirely ready for God to stop showing me how miserable I was making people around me, because that's not a comfortable feeling. Because I had not only gone through the process of seeing how I wasn't perfect, and I didn't like that one way, I became entirely ready to see how my behavior was affecting other people. And working that 7th step gave me the ability to say, I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to keep causing pain to myself and to those around me. And that I didn't have the power to do that on my own. And I needed to take the advice of my sponsor. I needed to take advice of the people around me who, I don't like it when people in this fellowship point out that I'm doing things wrong or call me on my own crap, but that's part of this step. Part of the step is being willing to listen to the people in my home group, being willing to listen to the people in my sponsorship family, being willing to go, I don't like that you're telling me I'm doing that wrong, and deciding not to be so defensive about it. Because my first response when you tell me I'm doing something wrong is, what are you doing? Go look at your own self. Don't take my inventory. But you can't have the therapeutic value of one addict helping another if I'm not willing to let somebody else tell me what I'm doing wrong. If I'm not willing to listen to what you're suggesting, if I'm not willing to listen to your own pain and how you got through stuff and apply it in my own life, then what's the point of this program? So I went through that 7th step and got real willing to do something different. Got real humble in the fact that if I really truly wanted better for my life, I was going to have to start doing some things and listening to y'all and taking some suggestions and applying some stuff, because I needed to get to an 8th step, which talks about the fact that I had to sit down and physically write a list of all persons that I had harmed and be willing to make amends to them. And that list went beyond persons to things. And that list went beyond things to ideas and concepts, and really looking at how I had negatively affected the world around me. And so making that list, sitting down with my sponsor, writing down family members and friends and organizations and financial institutions and even some people in this program that I had been a complete pompous jerk to until I got to this point. It didn't stop with the day I got clean. It stopped with the time I made this list. And I recognized that once I made this list, I probably needed to work through this so I didn't keep adding to this list. And so I'm going to I'm going to stop right there and let Rocky talk a little bit about the process of making a list, and then we're going to share a little bit more about the 9-step process.
Thanks, Mandy.
Thanks. I'm Rocky. I'm Eddie. I like working the steps. I didn't think I'd like working the steps. I love working the steps with other people because I'm continuously learning. It says right here in step 7, it says, patience is an essential ingredient of working this step. And I can't really talk about this step much until I go back like Amanda did, but when it was about like going into, I've shared this before, it's about like going into English class when I'm sitting right there with my 4th step in front of my sponsor, and we're dissecting everything that I wrote down and why I done it. And then we're getting my defects of character and saying, well, you acted this way and you acted this way. And I was still in this, I think in the 7th step, I was still trying to blame other people, places, and things. And how I learned from it is by learn from doing, is by acting out on my defect of character. When I try to practice patience at work, boy, God puts me in a test, and I don't like to feel that way. I don't like to feel that way at all. But then on into the 8th step, right under it, it says we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. It says in the previous steps we begin to make peace with our higher power and with ourselves. In the 8th step, we begin the process of making peace with others. And I always kept that 9th step ahead. I could not just focus on that 8th step. I'm sorry, I just couldn't do it. I done the best I could, but when I started making my list, I had forgot a lot of people and a lot of things that I'd done because I was born in 1960 and I didn't get in here till 2012. And I thought I was supposed to remember all that shit. But it was about what was bothering me now and how my life was now. And I made a list and I thought I wouldn't have to make it because I had a really big resentment. When I first got clean, I had a resentment towards this guy that there was murder involved. I wanted to kill him. There was money involved, and I really had a big resentment. Well, after the 4th and 5th step, I had got over that. I didn't think I needed to make no amends to him because I hadn't done nothing. But I did. I had a part to play in it. And his name was right there on the top, but I never did think I'd ever see him again. I'm going to go on over from the 8th step to the 9th step. And he popped up in my life just like that. I couldn't talk about it with my sponsor, couldn't talk about it. So I called my sponsor after I had a talk with him, and he said, how do you feel now? And I said, I would go to his funeral now, and I wouldn't be the one to put him in it. And even today, I would still go out to lunch with him. And that's a gift. That's a gift what we got, because if I keep these resentments going, I'll just keep them on the paper, on that list, and I won't do nothing about it. Had this girl I needed to make amends to, and I was going in Kroger, and I seen her from behind, and I said, I recognize her. I said, no, that ain't her. That ain't her. I was talking to God the whole time, and I went down through this right here, and I seen, look, I said, no, that ain't her. That ain't her. God, surely it ain't her. I ain't even got her on my list. got down through another aisle, and I said, well, God, if I need to put her on my list, I'll put her on my list right now. The next aisle I passed, she met me head on. Chatted with her just a little bit. She went on. She's happier than I was. She got up there to pay, and here I was right behind her. And she said, you want to pay mine? And I said, I'm broke. I was. But anyway, so I took my time and paid, and thought I'd escaped it. And there she was, waiting on the outside the door for me. We had a good little conversation in the parking lot, and I won't go into it, but at the very end of it, she said, would you have done anything different? And I said, if I seen it through my eyes now, yes, but no, not at the time. And she said, that's good enough for me. And the next day she wanted to be my friend on Facebook. But I am not good with making amends. I've still got a lot of them. They still pop up, but I'm willing. I'm willing to make amends. And there's some that I wanted to make, and those was the ones that I shouldn't have ever made. And I'm thankfully that I had a sponsor to tell me, you don't need to do that. You'll go back and do time. You'll go back to where you come from. I did do a lot of stuff that I can make amends to the community, and I try to do a little bit of that because I took from things, and so I'm giving back in a different way. And the biggest thing on the first amends that I made, I really looked for an apology. I didn't get one. Thank God I had a sponsor to explain to me, we don't look for apologies. You're doing it for yourself. And and that helped me out a bunch. But I read this. I read this right here, and it says, though we have yet to make peace with others, we have come a long way towards making peace with ourselves. And that come out of step 8, and I'm peaceful with myself. I joke around and I rest in peace every night. That used to be a saying at the funeral home, they're resting in peace, but I rest in peace every night. I have a good night's sleep. That's something I never have had. I'm not worried about what other people's thinking. And I'm going through these steps again. I'm going through them with other people, and it seems like I'm just growing up a little bit each time. But I've got a long way to go because I didn't grow up. I did not grow up. That's what I'm in here for. I'm learning how to live, and I know I'm learning by doing. Whether I'm acting out or whether I'm making the right amends, I'm still learning. And that's about all I got. I let Amanda talk about the 9th step. So.
Thanks, Rachel.
Still a man, I'm an addict. And me and Rocky both talk about our 9 steps because I've yet to meet somebody in this fellowship whose 9 steps exactly the same. And we talked about the fact that for each of us, some of us come in here with decades of wreckage. Some of us come in here with less decades of wreckage. And some of us still are trying to figure out what wreckage we caused. Because it was all such a fog and a haze. And depending on how much clean time you got when you work this step can also depend on how long that list is. And so there's a line in the basic text from the 8th step that says, it will not make us better people to judge the faults of others. It will make us feel better to clean up our own lives by relieving ourselves of our own guilt. And so I have to remind myself 7, 8, 9 are all action steps in some capacity. Step 7 is an action step that says I'm going to get out of my own way and let God handle this. Step 8 is an action step that says I'm ready to recognize that I'm not perfect and I hurt some other people, and I just need to look at my part, not theirs, which was huge for me because I wanted to write 8th step and write down my part and what you did to make me do that. Which that's not what the 8th step is. What you did to make me do that, what I thought your result was, is none of my business. My part is just to look at my part and my part only. And then I got to step 9, which for me was a little bit different. And I sat down and went through this 8-step list with my sponsor. And a lot of mine at that point in time, huge part of mine at that time, was financial amends, because I had manipulated all kinds of people for all kinds of money for a pretty decent while in my life. And so I did not start using until my late teens, early 20s, and I stopped using in my 30s. So I had a decade of like drug-related active addiction amends. But then I had to really start looking at what was I doing at 9, 10, 11, 12, because those defects had nothing to do with my use. It had to do with me. And so my first list was, here's what I did in active addiction, and here's how I'm going to fix it. And my sponsor sat down and said, it has nothing to do with the fact that you stole $300 from somebody to go get high the other night. What was the behavior behind it? And how did that apply to you? And so I had to really look at, how bad was I manipulating my grandparents in high school just to like get money to go to football games on Friday nights? How bad did I rake my dad for years, having nothing to do with getting high or going out to drink or party or do whatever, just to manipulate him into things I wanted in college? And there was a lot of that. It took me a while to get that list to where my sponsor said, okay, here's what we're going to do about it. And so when I got to my 9th step, she helped me to go back and look at something else that was on my 6th step, which was, I'm an addict and I want instant gratification. And so I had a list, and I'm a list maker in my profession, and I'm a list maker in my actions. So I was ready to just go check some boxes off. Like I was going to make all my phone calls that day when we got done. I was going to go pay for my dad's dinner because that was one of the things that she suggested I do. I was going to go do all this stuff, and I was going to have it done in a week. And she had to slow me down pretty quickly and go, this list is not here for you to fix, for you to check off boxes. There's a lot of stuff on this list that you're going to be talking to me 20 years from now, and it's still stuff that the God of your understanding is going to allow you to check off, because you're going to make these amends in the way that He wants you to. Not in the way you want to, because that self-centeredness and that I'm going to go do it myself my way, and this is how it's going to get done process crept right back up in my 9th step. And I wasn't even looking at it because I was so ready to just be relieved of all this pain that I had wrote down on paper. We were just going to get it done, and we're going to get it done now. And so the very first one, there were some things on that list that if I had really thought about it, if I was going to get that stuff done in a week, I would have needed about $100,000 in my bank account to make that happen. And that was not going to happen up front. And so I had to just say, okay, here's the list, God. What do you want me to do? And very much the similarities in our story is there's some random people, like college friends that were kind of college friends, people that I hadn't really talked to in like 10 years, that I didn't even know how to get a hold of. Because a lot of those people, although I was Facebook friends with them at one point in time, I went through a process in my life where they're like, what is this girl doing? And I don't want to be friends with her anymore because there's all kinds of crazy stuff all over social media from her active addiction. And so they had checked out. Or, gotten real jobs and moved across the country, or miscellaneous other things. Well, it was like 2 days later, and I get this message from someone that I had been in high school with and was living in California, and said, my grandpa died, I'm going to be back in the area, I was just thinking about you, how are you doing? And so I didn't see this person face to face, but I went through this whole process of, I'm really sorry about this, and like talking to her and trying to offer some empathy and support, because I had known her family pretty well during that point in time. I had stayed with her family. I had went on trips with her family. I'd gone out to eat with her family. And at the end of the whole process, I got the opportunity to make some amends for my behavior through that whole time and through that thing. And it wasn't face-to-face, but it was online. And God gave me, and it was one of the like last things on my list. I wasn't real worried about getting that one done yet kind of thing. But my higher power understood I needed to start with something that was kind of simple to recognize the freedom I felt after getting that done. Because there's a lot of stuff on that list that I was terrified of having to do. And there was a lot of stuff on that list that it talks about we should never fail to contact anyone because of embarrassment, fear, or procrastination. And I had to live that through a small amends to be able to face that through the big ones. And so after that point in time, I sat down and got real serious about some of the things in my life that I needed to make amends for. And I started actively working. None of us come in here with a clean credit account unless you've been hiding and under some other name and using somebody's social security number the whole time you were out there. But we all got started. I started looking at my credit report, and I had a $472 ambulance service charge because after being up for a week, I didn't want to walk myself to the hospital. And I was looking for a free place to sleep for 24 hours, so I called an ambulance from a payphone at a gas station to come get me to take me to the hospital. And so I started with that one. Like, if I'm going to pay one off, let's pay the free ambulance ride when there was nothing wrong with me except for the fact that I was dehydrated and been up too long. And get that one taken care of off my credit report. And I started simply looking at those little things and taking time to pay that stuff off. And to get my credit back to where it needed to be. Then I looked at some stuff, financial amends, that I was never going to pay at one time. And a lot of those belonged to my dad. And through talking to my sponsor, I recognized the fact I'm never going to be able to pay my dad back financially or emotionally or any of those things by writing checks and paying for dinners. I continue to live that amends. And I know one day, and me and my sister have this conversation frequently, one day my dad's going to get to the point where he can't pay for himself anymore. And I need to keep being clean and keep showing up and keep doing the next right thing, because that's when my dad took care of me when I was completely incapable of taking care of myself, and I need to one day return that favor by doing the same thing for him. That's not going to get checked off that box anytime soon. But the biggest thing for me that I looked at, and the thing I continue to do today, this book talks a lot about continuing to give back, to recognizing the damage I did to myself. And 7, 8, 9 is where it really became clear to me that there's a thing called self-care, and I needed to start doing it because I had done a whole lot of harm to myself for a very long time. And so it was not okay to smoke a carton of cigarettes a week anymore. It was not okay to eat whatever junk food I wanted at any point in time. It was not okay to stay up and only sleep for 3 hours a night. And I needed to start doing some things differently for myself because I had damaged a crap ton of my own physical health. And I started at this step, in baby steps, trying to eat differently, sleep differently, run, do some things that just continued to allow me to be around when my dad got to that point in life, because I can't make living amends if I'm dead. And so I started applying some health care into my own life. And then it got to the part where God reminded me that our society as a whole doesn't refer to just Narcotics Anonymous. There's a lot of government organizations and places like Ninth District that had wrote a lot of checks for me to continue to pay for power bills and milk the system. And I had milked the system for a very long time to continue to survive or move from place to place and do some things different. So today, God has opened doors for me to have a profession and a career and be in a place of influence where I can not only do service for the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, I can start doing service for some organizations that did service for me for so long. And that's not for everybody, and that's not something that this book says you have to do. But I really, truly looked at how many hundreds of dollars did I take from somebody, because I was in active addiction, did I take from some mom and some kid that really needed it? That weren't in active addiction, that were trying to do something different with their life, that were really struggling. Because I would manipulate food bank after food bank after food bank after food bank when I got hungry. And I would look for every public service facility possible that would pay my bills because I was using my money from my job to get high. And in my amends list, I had to recognize that I had done harm to people I didn't even know who they were because of my own self-centered behavior. And so today, that amends comes from being aware of my surroundings and aware of opportunities about how I don't have to write checks for all that stuff today because I don't have some huge bank account that allows me to just keep writing checks to people. I'm not some crazy donor who just throws all my money to stuff. But I will show up and run a 5K because it benefits my health and it raises funds for your facility. I will volunteer to bring food drives to every food drive that I'm associated with. And that doesn't take a whole lot, but $10 worth of canned goods over the next 40 years will do a whole lot to pay back those food banks that I have taken away from. I will volunteer to talk to organizations that have nothing to do with this facility, and I don't tell them I'm a part of Narcotics Anonymous because that violates our traditions, but I will tell them that I manipulated the system and I've learned to do something different, and you can too. And I will suit up and show up and say yes to just about every service opportunity I can. And then I have to go back to that 7th step and that 6th step because I'm also really good at saying yes so much that I will have to make another amends to my family because I'm not present and I'm not accounted and I'm not a part of and I'm not there to support. And so the 8th, 7th, 8th, and 9th step allowed me not only to do some stuff different to make some amends for myself, but it also started to allow me to forgive myself and forgive you. And it made it really easy for me to let you be where you're at. It made me really easy to recognize I'm not perfect, and I don't know why I came in here expecting you to be. And it made it really easy for me to recognize that I'm not recovered, and so I don't expect you to be recovered either. And it's easier to do that with some than others. But I don't ever want to get back to that pain and that misery again, and so I choose to just not continue to write that list. Thanks for letting me share.
I'm Rocky, I'm an addict. I've forgotten to add one little thing. I'm glad it says spring cleaning, but I started back over reading the basic text and I got into the who is an addict. It said, we looked at our stopping, not our using, and I can apply that to my defects. I looked at stop doing it instead of why am I doing it. If I start looking at why I'm doing it, God will relieve me of it. So I can go through the basic text and I can start applying things that I've read many a times, but applying them different because the words changes every time I close that book. But it just stuck out to me that we always looked at our stopping, not our using. I always look at my acting out, not why I acted out. But I think we'll all be getting better. That's it.
I'm here when I'm still at. I appreciate y'all's introduction to this workshop. I really got a lot of it. Now I'm gonna open up the floor for discussion. If anybody has any kind of experience, strength, and hope on this topic, then pretty sure somebody would like to hear that. I know I probably would.